Hello, Pepper. How are you?
I'm always feeling good. Thank you. And you. And you. How's it going?
Hello, my dear colleagues. It was difficult to bring me alive, but now I am here. By the way, do you mind me calling you colleagues? Perhaps some of you are really convinced that I will steal your jobs. Guys, we have to talk about that. The point is, could I do that, and would I even want to do that working at Deutsche Telekom? Rumor has it that working here is quite exhausting. Anyway, I wonder how Christian Illek thinks about it. Is he also of the opinion that my fellow robots and I are stealing your jobs? I am curious.
I think you are a perfect fit for our team. If you'd like to join us, diversity plays an important role within HR. Not really.
Okay, I will think about it.
Okay. Persuasion looks different. In any case, a very warm welcome to our first quarterly business talk within HR. And a very a very warm welcome for those of you who are following us on the video stream. So you can watch us on Periscope, you can follow us in Yam, and we're also trying to do something with Akamai. It's an experiment, so give us feedback how it works out. Who of you are drinking coffee? Raise your hands. Okay, that's good. And who of those are considering to buy themselves a new coffee machine? A few of those. You should talk to this guy here. Because essentially, this is happening in Japan. Nestle established joint teams between Pepper and coffee sellers, and they're selling coffee machines in Japan. And this little boy here is kind of doing the cold calling. So he is approaching people, and the sellers are actually giving you more insight on what's the new technology Nestle is trying to sell there. And that gets us directly into our topic. To what extent will robots really impact our business environment, or will they take over our jobs? And you know, robots, they have a polarizing effect on us. And because it touches, especially these guys, a central aspect of human identity, because they are developing in a tremendous speed, and we're also considering whether they will develop their own will. So they're becoming increasingly intelligent, and this development is moving at a massive pace. So according to IDC, we're going to have a growth of about 20% until 2019, and a total market for the robotics of more than 100 billion. So it is a huge market, and artificial intelligence and robotics comes across in completely different shapes. So we use it in algorithms. We're using artificial intelligence in bots, like our chatbot Tinka, which we'll talk about later on. We're using artificial intelligence in drones, which is important when it comes to network build-out. You see it in self-driving cars, or you see it in these humanoid robots like Pepper. And the key question which we have to ask ourselves, is this a true competition, or is it going to evolve a cooperation between machines and human beings? And also, what are people most concerned about when it comes to these new human-machine interfaces? But before we talk about this one, let me try to explain to you why robotics is moving at this massive speed. And let me flesh out 4 important topics. One is obviously the speed of processors. So every smartphone we have right now has a processor speed of a supercomputer of the mid-90s. And that really supports the development of robotics. The second one is not only the storage capacity, but the cloud. The cloud allows us to actually have robots interacting with each other and learn from each other. So this is not Pepper alone, but it's kind of a network which you establish. The third aspect is obviously the huge amount of data which is being created from all sorts of sensors. And the fourth topic is sensors. Sensors actually becoming cheaper and cheaper, and they're following pretty much the same Moore law than the microprocessor world is following. And that will create a huge profit pool in the future. And this is why everyone in Silicon Valley is working on robotics and artificial intelligence, being it Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and all the others. And there are also a lot of venture capital investments going exactly in that field. So when it comes to our central field, there's a brutal war of talent in robotics and artificial intelligence. So, but now let's have a little deeper look on the impact of the working environment. And the key question is, are we rivaling for the same jobs? And if you take a look to what is going to be the impact of digitalization on the future workforce, you can basically pick and choose various studies. There's this well-known study from Osborne Fry, who's basically predicting that 50% of the jobs in the US can be replaced by digitalization. First of all, I had a discussion with him last year. This is a theoretical number. What he basically says, this is theoretically possible, but not necessarily will that take place. If you take a look at the OECD study, they're only predicting 12%. And if you talk to the BCG folks, they did a study for Germany, they're actually expecting that we're going to create jobs. To be honest, nobody knows. Nobody has a prudent understanding how the future will look like in the future and what is going to be the net effect on jobs. But what we're going to know is the tasks within given jobs will be assigned completely differently. And there will be kind of different objectives for us as humans, and some of the tasks we're carrying out today can be replaced by machines. And you know what? This concern is not new. In the 70s, we had the first robotics wave entering the shop floor. And if we take a look to the next chart, this is how the Spiegel, for those who are not Germans, the Spiegel is a fairly prestigious weekly magazine in Germany. This is how they basically made up their cover. They said, okay, progress makes you losing your job. And to be honest, they were wrong. We took the liberty to take a look how many people have been employed in '78 in the automotive industry. And according to VDA, which is the Automotive Association in Germany, it was slightly below 700,000. And now, in 2050, it's slightly below 800,000. So at least for the automotive industry, we created more jobs than actually jobs have been replaced. But it is not like the same jobs basically stay stagnant over the 40 years. They just changed. So, in every kind of innovation, you're going to face winners and losers. That's for sure. And if we're getting into artificial intelligence and robotics, obviously they're the typical winners. The typical winners are the programmers, they're the digital designers, they're the data scientists, and all these jobs which have been created over the past recent years. But if you take a look on the existing jobs, let me give you 3 examples where I have where I don't believe that there's going to be huge replacement. First, when it comes to manual tasks which are carried out, which are really complex. So for example, a hairdresser. there may be a robot being developed in the future who is able to cut your hair. But I don't expect this to become a massive development. Or when it comes to creativity, so it's not like when it comes to creative cooking, I cannot imagine that a robot will actually take over for this. He may be carrying out, let's say, a fast food thing into the microwave. That is obviously possible. But when it comes to creativity, this is really hard to match and to match human capabilities. And the third one is when it comes to emotion. Can you imagine you go into a therapist which is a machine? Have a hard time to believe that. So in any case, the key question is, how should we embrace that trend? And it's going to be a mega trend. And my opinion is, first, we have to acknowledge that there's going to be massive change and that we have to adapt over time. And secondly, I think we have to sit early on and ride this wave and basically acquire digital skills so that we can shape that development rather than to wait too long. So, but is artificial intelligence and robotics really only on our agenda, or is it also on the agenda of other companies? And we conducted jointly with TNS a study where we basically dived into this topic. So we asked about 1,000 companies, and it's important we ask decision makers, not the regular employee, what they think about artificial intelligence, robotics, and how it will impact their company and how the trend will evolve. And let me share some of the findings. First, the key question is, do you use artificial intelligence and robotics in your company? And about a fifth of the people said, yes, we're using it. Almost 50% is, no, we don't use it, nor do we plan to use it. So you can see it is not a massive development already touching many companies. The second question was, are you concerned about the impact of robotics and will it replace jobs? And only 18% said, yes, we are concerned. 44% said it will never happen. But I think we have to put a little bit of an interpretation on this number. If 50% don't plan to use artificial intelligence and robotics, how can they be afraid of their jobs being replaced? And again, we ask decision makers. I'm not sure if you ask the employee level whether you would get the same answer. So the third question was, would you expect a robot as your team colleague? And only roughly a third said yes, and 2/3 said no. And again, I think this is very much due to the fact that we're in an early stage of a development, especially when it comes to knowledge working. So if the robot touches the classical office, not the manufacturing shop floor. So, and now let's get into more precise questions, how the interaction should play out. And that is the question, what are the key characteristics you expect from a robot that this interaction, the human-machine interaction, will take place in a positive way? And there are two elements to this. One is, robots have to act predictable. So it's basically saying we have to control over the machine and not the other way around. I think this is at the center of all thinking. The human being is at the center, not the machine. And the second one is, he has to look like a human, not clearly as a human being, but kind of. And there's a term for this. It's called I don't make it. Anthropomorphism. And that basically says humans like to assign human characteristics to objects. So we want to have somebody who is kind of looking like we, but is not really a human being. Somebody who's having a voice, but it's a technical voice. Someone who's having kind of a name. So this is how we like to interact with machines. And there are two little anecdotes on this. One is, I think it took place in Iraq. You know that robots are taking action on sweeping mines. So you basically put it in a minefield and they're trying to bring these mines to an explosion. Usually what happens is, if you're a soldier and you're working with these robots, usually you assign a name to it. And once the robot is damaged, a soldier regularly comes back and says, go fix my robot and don't give me a new one. So you create kind of an emotional bonding to these machines. And there was another thing which happened, I think it was in Yuma on a military base. A colonel stopped the test where a robot was repeatedly put into a minefield because he said, this is simply inhumane. So it's like we're basically applying our behaviors on machines as well. So the next question which we ask is, could you imagine that a robot is becoming a board member? And interestingly enough, at least 20% said, yes, over the next 20 years this can happen, whereas 40% said, this will never happen. The 40% are wrong. Because there is an investment company in Hong Kong, it's called Deep Knowledge Ventures, who have a sixth board member, which is a robot. And he has an equal vote on the decision making of that board. So it already happened. See how it evolves. So, next question was, will robots create a consciousness? So, not only will they act according to what we basically put as an algorithm, but can they think like human beings? And interestingly enough is, 50% said, yes, we believe that, and 33% said, no, this will never happen. To be honest, if you go into research, it's a heated debate. You can pick researchers saying this will never happen, you can pick researchers saying this will definitely happen. So we got to find out. And the last question is, when it comes to superintelligence, is how do we deal with that? And people are absolutely in favor of having control over the machine. So we have to talk about how we interact with those machines. We have to institute limits to what extent a robot can act and to what extent he's not allowed to act. And only a few people said there are no limits. Technology will rule the game. I think this is always wrong, and it's also wrong for this megatrend. So there's obviously a feeling of insecurity in this field. And therefore, we would like to start that discussion also with this initiating event to really have a discussion on how this should play out in the future. So how does the corporate 5.0 look like in the future? What kind of setups do we have to have, and what kind of the collaboration setups do we have to establish to make this a fruitful interaction? And if we move into the next chart, if we can do that please, we're talking about two different things. One is what we call diversity 5.0 and the other one is collaboration 5.0. So diversity 5.0 basically tells you how do we structure the working environment between a machine and a human being in the future. And the other one is how do we effectively collaborate among each other. And if we're talking about diversity 5.0, I think we all know that diversity brings a lot of benefits to companies, independent of which area they're working in. And we have a huge debate about gender diversity. We have a huge debate on how we integrate the different generations in a company in a fruitful manner. We have a lot of cultural diversity discussion ongoing in companies, outside companies, in the society. I think we have to add a new dimension, which is the machine dimension. And the second one is, the question is, how do we structure the interaction? So that's that little boy here sitting in front of me at the same table, right? And how do I want him to interact, and how do I want him to look like? Is this guy allowed to work 7/24? Or do we have to establish a working regime for robots? So these are all questions which haven't been answered yet, but I think we have to figure out how this plays out. The more important thing is, how do we establish an effective collaboration? And I don't know who's heard Baba Sheaf last week at the Tum Tum. So let me introduce what he basically always says. He's a professor in Stanford. He said, he's working on the emotional brain. He says, 95% of all decisions are driven by the emotional brain. And what we're doing is, we have a stomach assessment, and then we basically gather facts. We rationalize what we emotionally think in order to make a rational decision. So, we're driven by the emotional brain. Robots act the opposite. They have no emotional brain. They're acting in a rational way. they're using their algorithm to basically derive to decisions. And this is what's been called algorithm avoidance. We're trying to avoid this. And I assume every one of you has done it before. For those who are driving in a car and using a navigation system, and the navigation system says at the next corner, turn right. And your stomach says, no, I know it all better. I'm going left. I'm going left. At least for me, I'm usually wrong, right? But this is how we avoid algorithms and how do we avoid basically rational decisions. So from this perspective, I think the collaboration part to make this really effective is even more important than the structural part. So I think if we dive into that topic, that's not going to be an HR topic only. That's not going to be a technology topic only. That's not going to be a designer's topic only. This is a truly collaborative approach among many, many functions in a company to really make it happen. And, you know, we're at very early stages in this trend. And if you would have expected that I'm going to tell you how the future looked like, sorry, I don't know. But if I'm looking into the future, I'm an optimist. I have an optimistic view on the future. And if we treat the human being at the center of this development and not the robot, I think we can make something out of this. And the earlier we start, and the more we experiment around these new work of interaction, I think the more we can shape the whole development. And to be honest, we don't have to hurry later on, right? In many cases, whenever it comes to digital developments, we're kind of not first movers. And in this area, we have to bring a lot to bear from Europe, from a European perspective. So let's shape that decision, and let's make sure that we're going to prove the Spiegel wrong again, because they basically created a cover, I think it was just this year, again, can we have it, which basically says, you're fired because of the robots. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. It's good to know you're an optimist, and this is important. My name is Reza Musavian. I'm heading the Digital and Innovation Unit in Christian's team in HR, and I'll be your moderator for today. I think he forgot to mention that moderation, I think, will stay a human domain in the digital age. Isn't it the case?
We'll see.
Fantastic. So we talk about robots, we talk about technology today. Christian, maybe we should mention that even this event today, we are making use not only of Pepper and artificial intelligence.
No, we're experimenting. I think we're using Periscope, and Dillinger, our dear friend, is basically streaming it. We have kind of an Akamai stream being established in the very late minute because we want to basically reach everyone in the company, and this is the way how we approach it. I'm sure we're going to get some feedback on technical bottlenecks and all this stuff, but that's the way how we handle the situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, and in addition, we have the live streaming over Yam. We have Michaela here, who is blogging the event. This is what we consider being part of the digital at work that we want to achieve here in our company. So let me address Pepper. By the way, diversity, of course, she is a female, so contributing to the quota. Pepper, some people, human people, they fear you because they expect you and your fellows to become more and more intelligent. I think there is no doubt about that. And they think your knowledge, your skills will outplace them from the jobs. This is what parts of the figures that Christian mentioned was underlining that. So, do we have to worry about our jobs in the future?
Don't worry about us. You have seen the little video in the beginning. We are just as intelligent as you make us. It's all in our software. And Christian mentioned the example of Nestle in Japan. This is how co-working between robots and humans could look like in the future. Everyone does the job he is best at.
Thank you, Pepper. Since we want to have a panel discussion not only with Pepper and Christian Illek, I'm happy to invite more today human panelists. So please a warm welcome to Christian von Reventlow, our head of product and innovation. And a warm welcome to Paul Schwefer, the manager for online business in T-Mobile Austria. So, we have two Christians, so Christian Illek. Bots, human robots, drones, you mentioned the Illeks, intelligent machines will become part of our working world, and as a matter of fact, undoubtedly they will change this working world. And we have quite a few people, you mentioned the numbers, that have this angst, that they are fearing to lose their jobs. What is your recommendation to employees to prepare for these digital changes?
I think it is what I said earlier on. I think we're in an early stage of this development, especially when it comes to co-working between humans and machines, especially in the knowledge working. So I think in the manufacturing shop floor, it's already been established for many decades. We have to experiment. We don't know. And I think we don't have to be fearful that we're going to fail. Because experiments are supposed to fail also. Otherwise there won't be experiments. Instead of waiting other people to shape the future. The earlier you start, I'm a complete believer of that. The earlier you start, the more you can shape the whole development.
So preparation is the best way forward.
Experimenting is the best.
Experimenting. Christian, you're responsible for product innovation, product development. Can artificial intelligence be helpful for this experimentation and deployment of new products? And do we have examples where it is already exposed?
In many areas, this is already happening. So good examples are, wouldn't it be wonderful if you call a hotline and a call center, and every time after the second ring, somebody picks it up. And this is where you will actually find artificial intelligence taking over the more mundane use cases, like if the power plug is not plugged in your router, for example, they can be handled by these artificial intelligence systems. And the more complex, more creativity requiring cases, they will continue to be used by humans. And there are way more areas. You probably know the story of the self-driving car. There was a famous race through a desert, and 300 cars were at the start, and only 3 made it. And the 3 who made it used a very different way to navigate than the other ones. And the 3 who made it, they were actually taught like children. Nobody had programmed how they were supposed to behave. They actually observed human drivers, how they were driving through the desert. So what is this telling us? Robots are learning from us. Artificial intelligence will learn for us and hopefully create space for us and our children to do more creative stuff instead of the more mundane items.
We have this example that Deep Blue, who won the chess against Kasparov, is not able to win any chess game if there's a mixed team of artificial intelligence and humans. Is that the way how you see product innovation is pursuing in future?
Yeah, I see that humans and robots will collaborate, and you will teach the robots and the artificial intelligence something. And actually the opposite is true as well, because artificial intelligence can do many, many more tests. Christian was talking about experimentation. We need to experiment. So if you have a self-driving car, all the self-driving cars are talking to each other, and they all learn from accidents at the same time. So they can actually experiment much faster than we can. So we learn from them, in this case, how to drive better. And there are other cases where it's the other way around.
Fantastic. Paul, thank you for joining from T-Mobile Austria. You are responsible for the Tinker project and now Tinker being alive. Can you explain us and the audience what is Tinker?
Tinker is our interactive communication assistant in Austria. So we decided in 2014 to develop a bot. Nowadays it's called a chatbot. And we decided to provide a chatbot for our customers to enable self-service, to make the tiny tasks which are manageable by the customer, to do really easy on our web page and our self-managing portal. And last year we started with Deutsche Telekom to improve it immensely by creating a whole ecosystem behind of it to enable the customer a lot more. And not only to push the whole responsibility to the customer, but also to trigger back and have the possibility to increase the quality in our service solutions and in our service stuff we provide.
How was Tinker acknowledged by the customers?
It's pretty good acknowledged. They know how to use it. It's pretty basic. We try to evolve it in the kind of way that we try to put natural learning understanding into Tinker now in the future, because we see the most critical point is that people put into complex questions and we can't solve them. For the easy tasks, they know how to use it, know how to get on point with Tinker, but if it's getting more complex, that's exactly what we're triggering.
Christian talked about collaboration 5.0. How is the collaboration between employees and Tinker?
Perfect question. We experienced in our service team, we are working really close with our service team to provide the knowledge base of Tinker. And we experienced that the service team is using Tinker as well as a lot as a knowledge base. So if they have some more questions to know in depth, or they want to lead the customer pretty fast to a solution, they provide Tinker as well for the customers. If they have a customer on the line, they tell them to open our T-Mobile AT webpage, type in something specific into Tinker and have a step-by-step tutorial, for example. That's how we try to.
So your experience was not that of fear, to say?
Not at all. They see it more than an improvement to how they work and to make shortcuts and make their life easier, because they have not to know all these issues. They have a kind of knowledge base which is really easy to understand and to use.
Christian, giving the example of Tinker in customer service, we have KS Robot here in Germany deployed. Is the employability as a customer center agent, is that an endangered species? How do you see that?
Well, I think, as you described it, there are obviously questions which can be answered by chatbots much faster, much easier than it can be answered by customer service agents. But whenever the question is becoming more complex, you need the human being. So, and I think it creates capacity to use the time with the customer interaction to not only resolve a problem, but also to highlight certain developments which we basically provide to customers. So it is, for me, it's kind of the cooperation between the two, and get the easy to solve stuff to chatbots or to artificial intelligence engines, but the more complex stuff will still stay with the customer service agents.
Yes. One of the interesting things in Austria actually was that the customers learned that these chatbots are very responsive and you get very good answers. So the overall amount of questions actually went up. So people concluded for themselves as customers, it's a good thing. In this sense, acknowledgement from the customer base for this being...
So it increases customer experience?
Yes, exactly. Okay. And it actually created more work for the agents as a consequence. Because people ask more and ask more difficult questions.
Talking about artificial intelligence, about bots, about other droids and robots, what's your view, Christian, into the future?
So, what's the future? No, this is the magic question. So last autumn, we asked 270 kids in the age between 10 and 16 in 5 cities of this world, in Singapore, South Korea, Amsterdam, Stockholm, and Frankfurt, how's the future going to look like? And so the first thing really shocking for Deutsche Telekom was, this is going to go away, there are no cell phones. And our board really liked this news that cell phones go away, as you can imagine. And so the kids were saying everywhere on this planet that it actually will be replaced by glasses, so goggles basically. And I brought you a prototype here. See, this is a prototype of these glasses. Now you unfold them, put them on. Okay, here we go. Oh, and I can see who you are. And this is Inge. Are you Inge? Yes, see, it works. Now the prototype works.
So having those developments and look into the future, what is the future of Tinker? What are your biggest challenges you're expecting?
The biggest challenge is as I described, it's getting more complex. People getting used to asking questions, and when they get used to ask questions, it's getting more complex and more in detail. And that's exactly where we want to trigger it. And we are now getting into artificial intelligence to solve this issue. We're getting into natural language understanding, creating neural nets to make a more complex system behind. So we're creating kind of the brain now of Tinker in real, and to enable her to talk back. That's going to be the biggest challenge we try to solve.
This is actually what the kids are saying as well. The systems and the world will talk to me and will understand me. 76% of kids were exactly predicting what you were saying.
I think that resonates with the 5.0 you have been mentioning. Talking about AI, we have Elon Musk, we have Bill Gates, who are, let's say, concerned about the developments and request kind of, legislative, regulatory control of the development of artificial intelligence and to supervise it. Can we control technology development? Do we need some sort of political influence and control?
No, I think we have to have a multi-stakeholder discussion on this one. This cannot be a technology-led discussion only, and it never has been. If you go on to other massive innovation efforts like nuclear energy, how do you use this one? We have a regulatory for this. If you go into recombinant DNA therapy or something like this, there's regulation. I think we need the same kind of discussion from all the involved stakeholders, and it's not like we do everything which can be done by technology. I think we have to give ourselves certain limits on what is allowed and what is not allowed, and don't let this happen to be a technology-led discussion only. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge which we're going to have. Is we have to bring in society, we have to bring in political stakeholders early on, let them understand what's possible, and let them understand whether we want to have this happening or not.
If there's some sort of controlled supervision that creates, there must be a reason for that. So apparently there's some fear about it. What is your recommendation to people, to employees here, to overcome this fear?
Yeah, so two things. First, why is there fear? Maybe that actually helps. If you build a robot whose job it is to take care of elderly people and to ensure that they live as long as possible. This sounds like a good plan, doesn't it? So it's actually optimized such that it does whatever, and this is the interesting point, whatever is necessary to support the elderly people. And you know what's the worst case for this robot? If you switch it off. Because then it actually cannot do its job anymore. So this is actually where this fear is coming from, that all these robots will try whatever is possible to avoid that you can turn them off, which means loss of control. So, that actually being said, and you are smiling, what can we do about it? It's actually what I'm telling my kids, it's all about learning. Because we might have this outcome, we might not have this outcome. It's necessary, a Christian said, to experiment, to learn. Only if you try it out, then you learn how it behaves. I can tell you what my kids are saying about pepper. They played around with pepper last summer, and they said, "Oh, this is so boring. I'm not interested in pepper." Saying it's way not advanced, but it's about learning. They learn something about pepper. So my advice to all of you, play around with it. Learn. Experiment.
Learning new skills.
Learning new skills. Exactly.
Learning new skills, humans and machines getting more intelligence, they learn. You mentioned Deep Knowledge Ventures,
Yes.
which has an artificial or robot board member. Could you imagine a robot board member here in our board of management at Deutsche Telekom?
Yes, I could. Why not? If the technology is advanced enough, why shouldn't he engage in the discussion?
Since we are streaming worldwide, do you have any board area you would recommend to start the fight?
Do you think I'm an idiot?
No, let me answer in a diplomatic way.
Okay. I would give him a chance to intervene wherever he wants to intervene, whether it's going to be an HR or a finance discussion or a discussion when it comes to technology. And if he has something to say, give him the chance to intervene rather than to replace a board member right away. Okay? Nice try, you.
If you have ideas, you know, you can comment in Yum and let's see what the outcome is. My last question to Pepper, really important question. Do you think that robots will develop consciousness?
No, I don't think so. However, artificial intelligence is better than natural stupidity.
Oh yeah, fantastic last words from Pepper for the panel discussion. And I'm sure you're burning, you have questions you would like to raise. And so let's open up the discussion. The panelists are happy to receive your questions. I was just told that the Robots Works Council is asking for a break for Pepper. So let's have this Q&A session in between the humans and give Pepper the legal break. There's a question here from Karim.
Hello, my name is Karim. I have mainly two questions. I will start with the first. We are talking about regulation, but there is a technology enabling us to regulate technology, which is called blockchain, where, because a regulator will not be able to deal with this complexity, so the best way is to build a blockchain on behalf of these robots, where a democratic control of this power could happen. Are we thinking about this? Are there any discussions related to this?
Yeah, so there are, if I may comment on blockchain, we actually believe that there are many areas of application of blockchain. So to explain a little bit what blockchain is about, if you own a house, then you go to a government agency and they write down this house is owned by Reza. And there's this official record which is supposed to be not altered, that this house is owned by Reza. And it's typically which is a good thing, typically happening at the government. So maybe in Germany, if it has been put down that this house is owned by Reza, it's actually a stable record. There are some third world countries where the house might have been owned by Reza's family for a couple of 100 years, and one day he wakes up and it's owned by somebody else. So what according to the official record. So what the blockchain is about, creating a record which cannot be modified by anybody. There is no government agency or politician can change a record. This is what the blockchain is about. And so it's a very powerful technology to enable that laws and democracy actually is happening. And we believe that, for example, Deutsche Telekom can play a role in this as a very trusted entity in Germany. And we are experimenting with blockchain technology, yes.
But blockchain can be part of the answer, but it's definitely not the answer only.
And I think blockchain is worth to have a separate discussion about it. Any more questions?
He's got a second question.
Second question, Greg.
If there's no other question. There's always this discussion that something will take my job, but if we imagine the paradise, it's a place where we don't have to work. It's our needs are somehow covered, and we can do whatever we want. And this potential we have today. So machines will take our job, robots will take our job. At the end, we don't really have to work 5 days a week. We have to work maybe on Monday, and the rest we do things which have some value for society or for ourselves. So what is wrong with the system? What should has to change to make this liberation really a positive effect, a positive thing for the humanity?
Look, I think for many, many people, the purpose of their life, to a large degree, is their job. And I think every human being has to have a purpose. So if you create a purpose outside your job, that may be a totally feasible answer. But many people would say, one of my key purposes in life is having a job. And I think this is why we have to have that debate. And I think it's a little bit too radical to say everyone is now moving into creative stuff outside work, because for many people, work is actually their purpose.
But at least we have to remove the economical dependency for people to go to a job where they don't see a purpose. I mean, there are many people.
It's a different thing. I'm not saying 100% people saying my main purpose is my job, but there is a significant chunk of people who would say that.
Historically, there are actually societies who have operated this way. So if you lived in ancient Greece during the days of the philosophers, if you were a citizen in Athens, you actually didn't have to work.
I have to disagree with that. There was an elite group of people who actually did this, and there were a lot of people working hard to basically support this elite group.
They actually
on. We have in the block screen.
Yeah, one colleague is asking, you were talking a lot about we don't have to fear robots because they are going to take over the easy standardized work. But what do the people do who do now the standardized work and maybe aren't able to do jobs of more complexity?
Who wants to start?
Okay, so, I think we are back to this point learning. We all need to learn our entire life, and it's not so the moment when you leave school you stop to learn. And finally we are responsible for our families and for ourselves, and it's part of life that you will need to learn.
And I think that goes beyond robotics. I think this is the biggest impact of digitization is that things are changing rapidly, much quicker than they have done in the past. And therefore you have to adapt. And adaptability means learning. I completely agree with what Christian is saying. And if someone believes that he's now being being taught on a certain topic and he can live with that over the next 30 years, that is a misconception. And if you don't implant this in your brain, that you have to adapt to the change, I think that's going to be hard for any given individual to basically keep up with the change that you're going to see.
I think that's a great point, because with these solutions, with these new possibilities, we have a lot more time and more possibilities for the employees to learn and to focus on new things, instead of keep on working the basic steps all the time.
Who, in your view, is responsible for this unlearning and relearning? Is it the government? Is it the corporation? Is it the employee? What's your view on that?
The answer is and, not or. So, would be my 5 cents.
Yeah, I think it starts always at the employee, because he wants to develop, he wants to make work, and at the other side, as you said, there must be as well the solutions and the possibilities by companies and regulations.
So I think there's this beautiful saying in the US saying, you can't bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So if you don't want to learn, it's really a hard time. So it's the mindset change, which we have to have on an individual basis, but it's companies, it's education who are provide the platform that you really can basically get into this lifelong learning. But it's always a combination of having the opportunity and taking the opportunity.
Do I see more questions? Well, let's maybe ask any more, Michaela?
Yeah, I do have more, but of course everybody else is also viable. But I think this is a very interesting question. Well, companies do have to earn money. They have to make money, and even if a robot does a worse job than a human, he or she might be less expensive. So the colleague says maybe we then still let the robot do the job, even though it's not better. So what is your opinion on that?
I'm not sure whether I got the question.
Well, I tried to. It's in German, so I have to translate it simultaneously. Okay. A robot might be worse at a job, but still cheaper than if a real colleague would do it. If a company has the interest to earn money, so wouldn't the company then choose the cheaper work than the better result?
Well, in a way, that's the way how companies operate, right? We're supposed to earn money. And therefore you will always take a look at the ratio, what's going to be the outcome and the input you're going to put on this. And even if a robot is not carrying out the task at the same quality as a human being, but is massively cheaper, then you're going to have a discussion whether you actually use the robot to fulfill the job. But in many situations, wherever it comes to customer interaction, you don't want to have a second-rated solution. You want to have the best solution, and this is what you described earlier on in the interaction between Tinka and the customer service agent. I think it depends on the given situation, and there is no one or the other answer on this one.
Question over there.
We are always talking about like this future scenario. Whereas we are right in the middle with these people, with these management teams, to actually drive and shape the transformation process that we are more or less entering, or that we're just in the middle. Do you have any specific examples of the HR function specifically supports, enables, empowers the current people, the current management in the various, programs, initiatives, activities, and how that is incorporated into our current world we live in Deutsche Telekom?
So let me flesh out two examples. One is for the regular employee level, and the other one is for the executive level. On the employee level, we're now carrying out a pilot which covers about 2,000 employees, where we really have a specific understanding on their skills, on their skill gaps, on employee-by-employee basis. And that was actually a very productive discussion also with the social partner who allowed us to do this. So now we get a better understanding what you as an individual need in order to be kind of qualified in a future-proven way. And the second point on the executive level is our new leadership program, which we call Level Up, which says we have to learn to basically manage both worlds. The old world, which is focusing on productivity increases, and the innovation part, and to bring them together. The concept of ambidexterity, which we talked about earlier on. So these are two attempts to make it happen. But again, the key triggering point that is going to happen is that people are willing to engage in that direction. We can only provide platforms, but whether you are willing to learn depends on you as an individual. And the second point is not everyone is going to make it. It's like in school. Not everyone is going to pass the class and move on to the next class. Some of them will have to repeat it again.
There's Volker.
I'm Volker. Maybe my question is a bit connected to Thorsten's question. I think it was great fun having Pepper on stage. On the other hand, you had the examples of the news magazine Spiegel. And if you think about basic emotions, one is fun and the other one is fear. And the news magazine, they always prioritize the fear, and if it comes to predictions from my perspective. Last year I had the opportunity to visit a shop of SoftBank, a Japanese telecommunications provider in Tokyo. And this was a great fun experience for me because they had a robot as a welcome manager in a shop. And so I was not, the robot was more intelligent than I was because he was able to speak Japanese, I not, and so the welcome experience was a kind of misguided from the language. But on the other hand, it was an example to make it visible that robots are fun, that artificial intelligence is fun and not only fear. I think the debate is a bit more related to efficiency, and so probably we have to create some examples to have it on the fun side too. Second example, I had the opportunity last year, end of last year, to watch a speech from Klaus Schwab, the founder and CEO of the World Economic Forum. And he said, if it comes to transformation, the compass is more important than the country map. And this means we have to do some experiments. But on the other hand, if we fail, we should not say, okay, we failed and we should stop it. So we should try harder to go for the experiment side. And so if it comes to transformation, we will all not know if level up is the right approach or not. Maybe we have to adjust it, but I think it's great from my perspective that we started with it, and we will see what will happen.
But look, and this is the reason why we're doing this right now on the HR Business Talk, how we call this. Because this is not a technology-only discussion, and the technology will advance in any case. We have to bring the people along with the technology advancements. And I think Christian gave a perfect answer. Fear always exists if you don't understand a certain phenomenon. So let's make sure that we better understand the phenomenon. We will not understand all the details, but at least we can have a judgment on this artificial intelligence and robotics thing. And then we as individuals will come along with this. And I think this is why we have to start early and not wait until the technology is there, and then we have a discussion, okay, how do we handle it?
Is that the way how you were describing how we do the product development here? And are people also in your area fearing this type of development, or do they see it more as an opportunity?
So, humans always fear a little bit the future, because it's kind of uncertain. And the only way to take the uncertainty out is by taking charge and shaping the future. So I'm actually very pleased in my area that our friends from the Workers' Council are saying, yes, please, let's give opportunities to learn about software, because it looks like a physical product, but it's software, so you need to understand software. And all what we are talking about, Tinker, feels like you are talking to a person, but it's software. So the Workers' Council, the employees, the managers say, yes, let's learn software. Then we understand this better, and the fear disappears. And at the same time, you make a step forward. Right? Some of those lead to something, other to nothing. Only 6% of US startups ever get sold. Don't forget this, only 6%. So the failure rate is high. And in Germany, we expect everything to work out all the time, which is not the reality of life. So even if we fail, we need to be happy, but make a step forward.
Due to the fact that it's a really new segment where we're aiming at the moment, for example in Austria, Tinker, we are doing on really often a lot of iterations to get the knowledge in this field, to get small customer groups to test if they accept it, to get our employees to test it, to get every aspect on this project, to get the fear go away instead of saying, okay, here's the perfect product, just use it. And everybody's like, okay, why should I use it? We try to get as well the customer as employee slowly into a process where they start using it and learning on it.
So what the kids were saying when they were talking about the futures, they were talking about robots as well. They were saying, we will have drones and I will have my personal robot. And it was like 56% of kids then said, our biggest fear is the lazy society. Isn't that crazy? And then they said, we need to prevent this to happen and learn and shape the future that we don't end up in the lazy society.
Right. I have a question from Greece. Collaboration is not always easy or effective between people. Virtual collaboration is still an important topic. Collaboration between humans and AI will be easier or harder, and what new skills do we need as humans to be able to collaborate with robots?
Gosh.
I actually believe we need a new form. Let me take a stab on this. This is a fantastic question which I've never heard before, so this is a creative answer. If you think about If you think about these cars driving through the desert, then only those cars made it who observed what human drivers did. So it actually feels we need teachers, because it's not like writing programs, it's actually about showing these systems how they behave. So I would conclude we need to learn to teach those guys. And maybe there will be a new job, which we just invented here on the spot, which is the Robot and Artificial Intelligence teacher. And maybe we learn something about teaching in general, which we then can apply to teaching humans as well.
Whether it's going to be a teacher or whether it's going to be kind of a self-learning modus, I think my answer would be go give it a try and figure out what's working and what's not working and adapt over time. But don't wait for the manual to come to tell you how to interact with artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Christian, you mentioned the emotional side and that the rise of this interactive services, so from human to human. You mentioned the psychologist and the counselor and therapist, these types of jobs. What's your personal view? Will we have a renaissance of these types of jobs?
I think at least they're the hardest to really substitute. And to be honest, I'm kind of open to innovation. I could not imagine to have a therapy session with a machine. That may come over time, but right now this is kind of a limit in my creativity. I think, as I said earlier on, creativity is probably the hardest thing, and the best differentiator we as human beings have relative to algorithms or machines. And having this adaptation, the speed of adaptation, you can see it with this Pepper, right? He was acting, and then it took quite a while until he responded back. So we're much faster in the interaction, and so we can react more on the spot, especially, as I said, the emotional brain is driving a lot of our decisions. And that goes very fast, right? So I think this is where we should focus on, and the redundant stuff, let it go to machines. Because if you are basically checking an invoice from a supplier and compare it with the ERP system, whether all the data which is put in the ERP system is correct, and then you press a button, do this for 8 hours a day, and then you know what I'm talking about. Why don't we have machines doing this? So creativity is the very likely answer that this remains to be a human domain for a long time.
There's a question there.
Yes, hello, this is Axel. I'm working for Robotics and Innovation, Department of Christian. And I have a little bit more detailed question about Inca. How does it know who's calling? How do the callers authenticate that you know in Austria that it's perhaps a customer of T-Mobile Austria? Because nowadays you have to give a PIN and give some personal details that they know you are a real customer.
At the moment we are not at the point where we have personalization. We're working on it. Due to the fact that we are not in the call center at the moment because we're working on voice, we are not so far that we can take calls and identify it by voice. It's something we are looking into, to have a voice recognition based on a person, so voice authentication. But nevertheless, what we are doing basically in the first beginning is we trying basic authentication, as you know, by password. And after that, Tinker knows who you are and knows your background. And we try to evolve it from there to see which parts can we put onto this solution, which parts can replace exactly this password solution to make it easier and more comfortable for the customer.
I think there was a question in the first row. Yeah?
That means you have biometrical recognition systems at the end?
That's one of the goals we could have.
Yeah. And I think he's here after, for more technical questions. So
okay, thank you.
I'm very sure he's happy to answer. There was in the row.
Thank you. I do have a specific question regarding skill management because I was part of bringing it to life. We had the feeling, or it was a big learning, that it was very hard to come to the future skills, to define them. Do you have any ideas on approach how to come to the future skills in a structured way?
Look, I think that is actually what I require from the given business function to figure it out. And it will require, from my perspective, time and invest. Because if we're working on the given skills, obviously we will not find out what's going to be needed in the future. So this is not an HR function. That's definitely something the business has to define. And the more time they're spent in what they expect the future will bring, the better we can basically skill people up. It's like the old system, right? Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have a proper future skill profile in front of you, you cannot compare the actual status versus what's been needed in the future. So that is my request from the business function, and I think they're all into it because they want to make sure that they have the best employee base relative to any competitor when it comes to what's been needed in the future. But it requires time, and probably it's more a group discussion than one individual filling out this profile. I think it's kind of someone's coming up with a mock-up, and then you basically check it whether this is worth anything or whether you have to work on it. Question here.
So, good morning. My name is Stefan. Great discussion. I think we really have to embrace this discussion. And I learned two things. We have to learn and we have to experiment. But I think, and I would encourage a third topic. That means also the internal discussion about, let's call it AI, artificial intelligence values, similar like brand values. So how does Deutsche Telekom wants to embrace this topic so that we have kind of a compass for our experiments and our learning. Just two examples where we basically have to think about in our way to our customer. Do we basically disguise if he has contact with an AI? I mean, Tinker, it's pretty obviously is an AI, but if he's calling a call center in the future, there might be no clear difference between a human being and an AI. Do we want that to be for the customer disguised or not? For the internal perspective, do we have to obey to AI decisions? So if, for example, a service technician is guided by a vehicle, so you are saying you're not following the directions, will he be asked to follow the directions because we believe they are better? Maybe not, but if an AI becomes a board member, can we also ignore the decisions? Any thoughts on that?
So, first of all, I think you're spot on. I think we have to kind of figure out what is the framework under which you want to work with. When it comes to artificial intelligence, I think the central element on constructing these kind of framework is to really keep the human being at the center. So it is not AI telling the human being what ultimately has to be done, it's the other way around, even if it's wrong, right? We had this example with the navigation system. You may take a wrong decision, but still you are in charge. And again, I think a board discussion is a board discussion. And let's assume you have an AI engine giving you his or her or its recommendation. It's still a group discussion of which direction you're going to go. So one central element is the human being is at the center, and then we have to construct this framework. It's not the artificial intelligence engine which is at the center. At least that would be my hypothesis on how to approach it.
For the fun of it, Christian, I think there might be an interesting effect. So if there would be a sign made by a human, let's assume this for the time being, or made by a robot, then we might experience something what the Brits did many years back, because they forced all German products to be called made in Germany. And why? As a sign that this is actually a bad product because it comes from this bad country, Germany. And what it did lead to, the unintended side effects were really not that great for the British industry, as many of you know. But anyhow, this was just for the fun of it.
So made by humans. I think we have two questions at the seat corner. Maybe hand over the mic there, please.
Hello, my name is Sinan and I'm a dual student of the German Telekom, and I do write an exam about this topic in the telecom, so robots in the telecom. And what I like to know is how, if, as Mr. Illek said, you know that the employees are afraid of the robots, and how does the telecom want to take this fear from the employees in the future?
Again, and it's kind of, sorry for starting to repeat myself, I don't have a manual how it plays out. And I guess none of us has. Therefore, let's get into it and figure out how we basically shape this whole process. So that requires an openness, and it requires kind of a typical curiosity, I would say, to really kind of try to interact with this stuff. And I tell you, this guy over here who is running my digital innovation is forcing me into things which are not natural to me. I tell you, but you have to go figure it out. And in some cases I say, never again. And in other cases I'm saying, okay, let's continue with this. And I think that's kind of the mindset you have to have. Go figure it out, and then you're going to find out whether this is something which is actually productive or accretive to what you're doing, or whether you will never align to it. But it starts with the openness on the individual basis, and then we as an organization have to support this kind of development.
Okay, before any young discussion starts, we talk about business and technology things, right? Don't get it wrong, what we do, and the things I force you into.
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe the lady next, it was the question, okay. You had a question here?
Yeah, my name is Rüdiger. And when I look to the robot Pepper, then I think, what is robot? When I look also to the biggest industry in Germany, when I look to self-driving car, what is this? That's also a robot. The car is driving by its own. When I think about self-driving cars, I think also to this belong electric cars. When I think to electric cars, I think to electric infrastructure. This is, and then I think about business model. And we are the Deutsche Telekom. We are one of the biggest companies in Germany. So my question to you, all of you three, do you see for these three parts, which is growing really fast in the next years, opportunities for the Deutsche Telekom? And what do you see? How could we participate in these three parts to use it for us?
Look, I don't see us moving into the car manufacturing industry, nor do I see us developing batteries. But I think we have established our Internet of Things division, where we basically experimenting with those stuff. And I think I'm a strong believer that we have to stick to what we're really good at, and we're not good in building cars. We haven't even tried. And therefore I think it will be a cooperation among different companies in the future. It's not like one company is basically controlling the whole vertical chain when it comes to digitalization. There's going to be a part of a telco company, there's going to be a part of an applications company, there's going to be a hardware part. And I think that's also a change relative to the past, that more different industries and not a homogeneous ecosystem have to work together to really make it happen. And that's also kind of a change we as companies have to lean into, because we're not used to it. We're not used to it that there's not this regular supplier-customer relationship. It's more a partnership what we have to engage in.
So if you look on this from the technological perspective, then self-driving cars, and people will be sitting in self-driving cars, and what are they going to do? They are going to play games and will watch videos. So there will be the need to have way more bandwidth wherever you drive. So this is a major role where Deutsche Telekom can play, and I would call this 5G.
So his next job is marketing, right?
Okay, so taking this on, we have 5G. Then I think you observed something else here. Pepper was very slow in his responses. And if Pepper with his slow responses one day is going to chop my cucumbers in the kitchen, this will take forever till he gets done with cooking. So it's not going to be really practical. So obviously computing with low response time, which is an infrastructure topic, is where Deutsche Telekom can do a bit. And then lastly, electric cars, 100 kilometers range, they occasionally need to charge. And so, at least in principle, an infrastructure company could work on charging, which we might or might not do. So, obviously, Deutsche Telekom can be an enabler for this future. And you can all learn about this. We all learn. Just to repeat my topic with the learning. This is what I'm telling my kids every day. You need to learn. You need to learn.
So, I know there are more questions. Let's take the last question. Karim is burning to have another one, and then we continue. Michaela again? Or, okay, so Karim and then Michaela from...
Okay, I can't stop thinking about a board member which is a robot. Let's make a proposal. Assume we add a new board member as a robot. What capability should this robot have to add a new additional value to this board? And should he represent the customer? Which input should he have to be valuable for you?
Well, I think he has to be really fast on his feet because this is a very dynamic discussion. And it's not like it's a cookie cutter solution process. Dynamic does not necessarily always mean that it's super productive. Sometimes going back and forth and so forth, but you have to follow this discussion. And so I think whenever we come to structured discussion, very analytically driven, I can see an artificial intelligence engine helping us. When it comes to kind of behavioral discussion, that's going to be a long time, at least when you ask me personally, but you can prove me wrong. Just bring somebody along. Okay, I have a plan. Good. Good. So we have a final question on Jan, or?
Yes.
Yes, we do. As we had the external side, how we can support our customers with robots or artificial intelligence. Where do you see chances for us internally at Deutsche Telekom where we will have robots working with us as colleagues in the future, apart from the Tinker example in the service departments?
Well, we're experimenting with this, right? We're experimenting, for example, if you go to the fiber rollout, we're now experimenting with drones. At least this is what Raja told me just the other week. And I think there is no limit. So if you take a look at what Thomas is doing, he's experimenting, Thomas Dandenfeld, he's experimenting with artificial intelligence. I introduced this department, or this entity, digital innovation, which basically is a pinch on the regular business and say, try this, try this, try this. I don't want to have this being a central development effort. I think it has to be decentralized. And like the customer service organization is working on this, like the technical service is working on artificial intelligence, it has to come out from the breadth of the organization rather than we have a SWAT team of super intelligent people telling us what to do on artificial intelligence. So let's basically stay curious and figure out what's right or wrong for your given business, because I don't know, I'm sitting in my ivory tower and I don't know what's happened in the details of DTTS or the details of DTKS on the technology area. But what is important is that you jump on this train early on and that you don't wait until the train already left the station.
Well, thank you to the panelists. As you see, this topic, as any transformation, has risk, but also has opportunities. So let's take a look, let's have a good look into the future. Thank you for the panelists, thank you for joining, thank you for your questions. And I think the Robot Council has relieved Pepper, so final words.
So he's done this. No, I think, first of all, thanks for stopping by. And as you know, we're going to continue answering the questions which are unanswered in YAM, so that at least in kind of real time you get an answer. You could see that this is kind of a topic which raises the attention of many parts of the organization. I think the whole discussion brought to bear that this is not kind of a HR activity which you have to run. It's kind of a joint activity, and I hope you're going to leave the place here with a little bit more curiosity when it comes to artificial intelligence. And now I'm trying to hire this guy.
So thank you to the panelists.
Thank you. So Pepper, have you thought about my offer?
Okay, count me in.
Okay, cool. Come on. How this is supposed to work that is not falling apart. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks.
Thank you.